For the past decade, Elon Musk has warned about the dangers of artificial intelligence, saying it is the greatest risk facing humanity, and even more dangerous than nuclear weapons. In 2015, he thought he'd found a like-minded technologist in Sam Altman. The two men co-founded a non-profit called OpenAI. The idea was that only a non-profit can be trusted to develop such a dangerous technology. 10 years later, the situation has completely changed. OpenAI has officially transitioned to a for-profit company and is preparing for an IPO in 2026. Musk is not happy about this. In fact, he's so unhappy that he's filed 2 lawsuits against Sam Altman and OpenAI. But the promise of AI profits is so seductive that even Musk can't resist. In 2023, he started his own for-profit AI company called XAI. In this video, we'll go through Musk's lawsuit and assess whether OpenAI's actions are consistent with the nonprofit mission it claims to uphold. While Musk and OpenAI are bogged down in complex litigation, there are tons of smaller AI startups that are making real, useful products. One of these products is Lindy, which is also the sponsor of today's video. Lindy is the easiest way to build and deploy AI agents. You can think of it as if ChatGPT and Zapier had a baby. What sets Lindy apart is the ease of building these agents. You don't need to be a developer. You don't need to understand complex workflows. You just tell the AI agent builder what you need. For example, let's say you run a corporate Twitter account and you need to delete the massive deluge of spam comments that are such a problem on the platform these days. You can quickly make a Lindy agent that deletes this spam for you. Lindy can also act as a full QA engineer for your app. It opens your app like a real user, clicks through every workflow, fills out forms, tests buttons, and automatically finds bugs. Lindy has more than 6,000 integrations, so if you can dream it, you can build it. The average Lindy user saves 5 to 10 hours a week. From sales and support to operations, Lindy's AI employees work 24/7, so you can focus on growth, not grunt work. If you do any type of work online, Lindy is a game changer, and you can get started for free by clicking the link in the description below. And now back to the video. In the early 2010s, Elon Musk began to grow concerned about artificial intelligence. As early as 2014, Musk has been stating publicly that he believes artificial intelligence is humanity's biggest existential threat. Musk fears that a super advanced artificial intelligence could become sentient and decide to destroy humanity. Musk's fear of AI seems to be influenced by his long-standing interest in science fiction. For example, when he first started sounding the alarm about AI in 2014, he referenced the 1968 movie A Space Odyssey, which included a homicidal AI. Musk's pre-existing beliefs about the dangers of AI were reinforced by real advancements being made in the field. In 2010, a company called DeepMind was founded in the UK. Their goal was to develop artificial intelligence that can learn on its own. They developed an AI that could learn how to play video games. They wouldn't explicitly program it for that game. The AI would just observe how the game works and eventually become an expert at it. At first, DeepMind's AI could only play very simple games like Space Invaders, but this was considered to be a major breakthrough at the time. In 2014, Google acquired DeepMind. Google hoped to implement DeepMind's AI across its existing products and eventually monetize new AI products. At the time, DeepMind's AI wasn't terribly useful. It could only play some simple games like Space Invaders, but with Google's massive resources, they could potentially make huge advancements. Google's acquisition of DeepMind greatly aggravated Musk's anxiety. He feared that Google would be able to develop something he calls Artificial General Intelligence, or AGI. AGI is a vaguely defined theoretical concept. It is an AI that is more intelligent than a human being. Musk feared that an AGI could become malevolent, like in the science fiction movies he watches. As a for-profit company, Google was only concerned about maximizing profits. Musk believed they would recklessly develop an AGI without regard for the risks such a technology could pose to humanity. In 2015, Musk decided to start his own AI startup to compete with Google. He contacted Sam Altman, who is the CEO of the venture capital firm Y Combinator, as well as a number of other Silicon Valley heavyweights. Together, they co-founded a new venture called OpenAI. The co-founders collectively pledged to donate up to $1 billion to fund OpenAI's operations. In 2015, OpenAI published a blog post where it stated its mission. Their goal was to advance digital intelligence in the way that is most likely to benefit humanity as a whole, unconstrained by a need to generate financial return. As a non-profit, our aim is to build value for everyone rather than shareholders. Researchers will be strongly encouraged to publish their work, whether as papers, blog posts, or code, and our patents, if any, will be shared with the world. In December of 2015, Sam Altman gave an interview to Vanity Fair where he discussed OpenAI. He explained, quote, "The big one is that we're extremely flexible. It's not like we have a duty to shareholders. We're a true non-profit," unquote. When asked why he made it a non-profit instead of a for-profit, Altman responded, quote, "A for-profit would be suboptimal to the world as a whole. There are plenty of other things to make money from," unquote. According to Altman, AI is such a powerful technology which could pose massive risks to humanity that it needs to be a non-profit. In March of 2017, Sam Altman stated in an interview, quote, "That's why we're a non-profit. We don't ever want to be making decisions to benefit shareholders. The only people we want to be accountable to is humanity as a whole," unquote. For the first few years, both Musk and Altman seemed to be aligned on OpenAI's mission. At least they were aligned in their public statements. They believed AGI posed a significant risk to humanity and needs to be developed responsibly by a non-profit. But upon further analysis, the entire founding concept of OpenAI is a bit nonsensical. Let's suppose that Musk's fears are valid. DeepMind's AI will eventually evolve into AGI. Google is a greedy and evil corporation that will recklessly try to commercialize AGI. Google's AGI will go out of control and destroy humanity. OpenAI concurrently develops its own AGI. Because OpenAI is a non-profit, its AGI is benevolent and does not seek to destroy humanity. How would this do anything to stop Google's evil AGI? To be clear, this is all pie-in-the-sky fantasy stuff. The idea that AGI is going to destroy humanity is a product of Musk's obsession with science fiction. We'll discuss the limits of AI technology later. OpenAI aimed to develop AI similar to DeepMind's, but instead of training on Space Invaders, they started training on the video game Dota 2, which is far more complicated. While the initial results were promising, they soon ran into problems. Training these AI models was computationally intensive, more so than they had anticipated. Google has massive data centers, and they can afford to spend billions of dollars developing DeepMind's AI models. OpenAI didn't have its own data centers. They had to rent computing capacity from cloud service providers. This was very expensive. The founders of OpenAI had pledged to donate up to $1 billion, but by 2019 they had only donated $135 million, of which $45 million came from Musk. If they wanted to compete with the likes of Google, even $1 billion wouldn't be enough. Prior to 2019, OpenAI didn't have an official CEO. It had a board of directors with two co-chairs, Elon Musk and Sam Altman. By 2018, there was a growing consensus that OpenAI needed some way to access a lot more capital. In February of 2018, Musk proposed that OpenAI should be acquired by Tesla, a company he controlled. On February 1, 2018, Musk sent the following email to OpenAI's chief scientist, Ilya Sutskever. Musk said, quote, "We may wish it otherwise, but in my opinion, Tesla is the only path that could even hope to hold a candle to Google. Even then, the probability of being a counterweight to Google is small. It just isn't zero," unquote. Tesla is a publicly traded for-profit company. It thus has the ability to raise capital in a way that OpenAI does not. If Tesla were to acquire OpenAI, this would raise questions about OpenAI's non-profit mission. As a for-profit company, Tesla has a fiduciary duty to its shareholders. To the extent that Tesla provides funding to OpenAI, Tesla must expect a financial return on this investment. Musk wanted to merge OpenAI with Tesla so as to be a counterweight to Google. Google is a for-profit company. Tesla is also a for-profit company. So what's the difference? Google is evil, Tesla is good. Tesla is good because it's controlled by Elon Musk, and Musk is a great guy, because this is all in Musk's own conception. Musk understands the dangers of AGI because he watched 2001: A Space Odyssey. The other members of OpenAI's board rejected Musk's idea of being acquired by Tesla. A few weeks later, Musk stepped down from OpenAI's board. This was due to potential conflicts of interest, as Tesla was developing its own AI. Even after stepping down from the board, Musk remained in contact with OpenAI for at least the rest of 2018. In December of 2018, Musk sent the following email addressed to members of OpenAI's senior leadership, including chief scientist Ilya Sutskever and Sam Altman. Musk said, quote, "My probability assessment of OpenAI being relevant to DeepMind and Google without dramatic change in execution and resources is 0%, not 1%. I wish it were otherwise. Even raising several hundred million won't be enough. This needs billions per year immediately or forget about it," unquote. It appears that as of 2018, there is a broad consensus among OpenAI's board that OpenAI needed to greatly increase the resources available to it, and the non-profit structure was not going to cut it. In 2019, OpenAI signed a deal with Microsoft. Microsoft initially invested $1 billion into OpenAI. They would go on to make further investments. To date, Microsoft has invested $13 billion into OpenAI. The investment was not done in cash. Microsoft gave OpenAI credits to use its Azure cloud computing service. Obviously, Microsoft is a for-profit company. They need to make a return on their investment. At this point, OpenAI was still trying to preserve the fiction that they are a non-profit, so they created a very complicated deal structure. OpenAI transitioned to a so-called capped profit entity. Investors are only allowed to receive a return up to 100 times the size of their original investment. This return can be either in the form of selling their shares or receiving dividends should OpenAI ever become profitable in the future. OpenAI argued that if it develops AGI, the economic returns will be worth trillions of dollars. Microsoft put in $13 billion, so they'll be able to receive a return of up to $1.3 trillion. These are crazy numbers. At the time, OpenAI said they expected to lower the profit cap multiple in the future. In reality, they would go on to do the opposite. In 2025, they removed the profit cap altogether. We'll talk about that later. In addition to this weird capped profit equity stake, Microsoft also received other benefits. Firstly, Microsoft received licenses to integrate OpenAI's technology into its own products. For example, Microsoft uses OpenAI's technology to create its Copilot product. From what I understand, Microsoft does not pay OpenAI any ongoing licensing fee for this. They have the right to do this based on the terms of their initial investment. Additionally, Microsoft receives 20% of all of OpenAI's revenue. Revenue, not profit. The exact terms of the revenue share have not been made public, but it has been reported by multiple media outlets. OpenAI has incurred operating losses since inception. Even if they do become profitable, obviously revenue is always greater than profit. A 20% revenue share is much more valuable than a 20% equity stake. In addition to being OpenAI's largest shareholder and compute provider, Microsoft is also OpenAI's commercial partner. OpenAI sells access to its APIs through Microsoft's Azure cloud computing platform. After the transition to a capped profit entity, OpenAI started to operate more like a regular company. Prior to 2019, they did not have a CEO. They were managed by a board of directors. Around the same time as the Microsoft deal, OpenAI appointed Sam Altman to be the company's official CEO. So how did OpenAI reconcile this Microsoft investment with their original nonprofit mission? Microsoft's license to use OpenAI's technology only applies to OpenAI's pre-AGI technology. If OpenAI develops AGI in the future, this will not be licensed to Microsoft. Once the profit cap is reached, OpenAI reverts to a nonprofit, and thus the AGI will be controlled by a nonprofit. But what even is AGI? How is it defined? We'll come back to this later. In November of 2022, OpenAI released ChatGPT, which became hugely successful and catalyzed the AI investment boom, which has hypnotized both Wall Street and Silicon Valley ever since. Over the following years, OpenAI raised tens of billions of dollars from various venture capital firms, with its valuation skyrocketing to $500 billion by 2025. ChatGPT was probably far more successful than OpenAI had imagined. In hindsight, Microsoft got a killing on their OpenAI investment. Their $13 billion investment eventually turned into a 27% equity stake. On paper, this is now worth $135 billion. Plus, they get 20% of OpenAI's revenue in licenses to use OpenAI's technology. Once it became clear how valuable OpenAI was, corporate governance started to get interesting. In November of 2023, a rather bizarre incident happened. OpenAI's board of directors fired Sam Altman as CEO. OpenAI published the following statement regarding the decision, quote, "Mr. Altman's departure follows a deliberative review process by the board, which concluded that he was not consistently candid in his communications with the board, hindering its ability to exercise its responsibilities. The board no longer has confidence in his ability to continue leading OpenAI," unquote. The firing was very controversial within OpenAI internally. The majority of OpenAI's employees threatened to quit their jobs in solidarity with Altman. Microsoft was also supportive of Altman and wanted him to be reinstated as OpenAI CEO. Microsoft offered to hire Altman to run Microsoft's own AI efforts. Microsoft owns the license to substantially all of OpenAI's intellectual property. With the help of Altman, there's nothing stopping them from continuing the development of ChatGPT internally and cutting OpenAI out of the loop. OpenAI's board quickly realized that they overplayed their hand. Microsoft held all of the cards. Without Microsoft, OpenAI would have nothing. Without OpenAI, Microsoft would still have everything, because they already have the rights to all the IP. OpenAI reinstated Sam Altman as CEO. Following Altman's return, OpenAI continued to deepen its relationship with Microsoft. The two board members who wanted Altman gone were Ilya Sutskever and Helen Tonar. Sutskever also served as OpenAI's chief scientist. Both of them were pressured to step down after Altman was reinstated. So why did they want to fire Altman? In an internal memo, Sutskever wrote, quote, "Sam Altman exhibits a consistent pattern of lying, undermining his executives, and pitting his executives against one another," unquote. This is a harsh but vague statement. What did Sam Altman allegedly lie about? We don't know. Helen Tonar gave a little bit more detail about her problems with Altman. For example, she said that when the company released ChatGPT in November of 2022, Altman did not inform the board beforehand. Tonar found out about the release on Twitter at the same time as the general public. Tonar was an independent director. She had a seat on the board, but she was not directly involved in OpenAI's day-to-day operations. As a board member, she's tasked with making sure OpenAI is staying true to its founding mission of benefiting humanity. Tonar's job became all the more important now that OpenAI has this complicated relationship with Microsoft. Her only source of information is what Altman told her, but Altman told her almost nothing. It was impossible for her to provide oversight of the company. The non-profit board of directors had become a farce. Its only purpose was to create the outward appearance that OpenAI was controlled by a non-profit. In reality, Altman was running OpenAI as if it were a subsidiary of Microsoft. That's why Tonar wanted to fire him. After Altman was reinstated, Sutskever and Tonar were pressured to step down. They were replaced by Brett Taylor and Larry Summers. Brett Taylor is a longtime Silicon Valley tech bro who previously served as co-CEO of Salesforce. Larry Summers is a former US Treasury Secretary who has served on the boards of multiple public companies and served as an advisor to hedge funds and investment banks. In other words, these are traditional businessmen who you would expect to see on the board of a large for-profit company. In November of 2025, Larry Summers stepped down from OpenAI's board after it was revealed that he had email correspondence with a certain financier. But that's a story for another time. Over the following years, OpenAI burned cash at an alarming rate. From 2019 through 2025, OpenAI has raised approximately $60 billion, of which $13 billion came from Microsoft. They've already burned through most of this cash. At this point, they're quickly exhausting the pool of available venture capital. They also have $1.4 trillion of data center spending commitments, which they have no way to pay for. In the fall of 2025, it was reported that OpenAI is planning for an IPO, possibly in the second half of 2026. However, they can't go public with their weird capped profit structure. So in October of 2025, they officially transitioned to a for-profit company. Now OpenAI is a for-profit company. Microsoft owns a 27% stake in OpenAI. The profit cap has been eliminated. Microsoft will continue to receive 20% of OpenAI's revenue. This is in addition to their 27% equity stake. Microsoft continues to own rights to OpenAI's intellectual property. Additionally, OpenAI commits to spend at least $250 billion on Microsoft's Azure cloud computing service. It's unclear how OpenAI plans to fund this spending commitment. They created a new non-profit entity called the OpenAI Foundation. The OpenAI Foundation will own 26% of OpenAI's outstanding shares. The OpenAI Foundation will appoint the board of directors of the for-profit company. The OpenAI Foundation has its own board of directors. The chairman of the board is Brett Taylor. This is the pro-Altman, pro-Microsoft guy who replaced Helen Tonar. Sam Altman also serves on the board of the OpenAI Foundation. There's really only one difference between OpenAI and a traditional for-profit company. In a traditional for-profit company, the shareholders vote on the board of directors. In the case of the OpenAI Foundation, the board members appoint themselves. If a board member resigns, the remaining board members vote on his or her replacement. If at some point in the future, OpenAI develops AGI, Microsoft will not have the right to license it. The OpenAI Foundation will decide whether or not to commercialize the AGI. If they decide affirmatively, it will be commercialized by the OpenAI for-profit entity. The profits will be distributed to OpenAI's shareholders, including Microsoft. AGI is defined as, quote, a highly autonomous system that can outperform humans at most economically valuable work, unquote. A product will be considered AGI by an independent expert panel. None of OpenAI's current products are considered to be AGI. Elon Musk is not happy about any of this. He donated $45 million to OpenAI, but he does not own any equity stake, so he feels like he got ripped off. In February of 2024, Musk filed a lawsuit against Sam Altman and OpenAI. In OpenAI's original agreement, it can only license pre-AGI technology to Microsoft. OpenAI licensed ChatGPT-4 to Microsoft. Musk alleges that ChatGPT-4 is AGI, and thus OpenAI violated its own agreement. ChatGPT-4 was a large improvement over GPT-3, but to call it AGI is a stretch. AGI is such a vague and poorly defined concept that it would be almost impossible for Musk to prove this in court. Musk soon realized this and withdrew the lawsuit. But he didn't give up. In August of 2024, Musk filed a second lawsuit. In the second lawsuit, he accuses Altman of conspiring with Microsoft to remove certain members of OpenAI's board and replace them with yes men who would go along with their for-profit plans. While this may be true, we also have to remember that Musk tried to merge OpenAI with Tesla so that he could profit from it personally. It's a bit of a pot calling the kettle black situation. And now Musk has his own company XAI, which is trying to develop AGI for his own personal profit. As of the time of recording this video, Musk's second lawsuit against OpenAI is still pending. I personally think this whole dog and pony show about AGI is little more than an elaborate hoax. Prior to the release of ChatGPT 5, Altman hyped it up to a grandiose degree. He called it a big step towards AGI. In reality, it was a massive disappointment, which was only a marginal improvement from ChatGPT 4. Large language models are nothing more than statistical tools that predict the most likely word one at a time. Don't get me wrong, this can be useful for a lot of things, like parsing text and searching the internet. But ChatGPT is not going to become some super intelligence that takes over the world. Their other main product, Sora, is even less useful. It makes bizarre fake videos with no obvious commercial use case. OpenAI's current business model is not sustainable. They incur billions of dollars of monthly computing costs to run ChatGPT and Sora. They don't generate nearly enough revenue to cover these costs, let alone their massive data center spending commitments. To convince investors to fund their cash burn, they need to promise that the magical AGI is just around the corner. The whole thing with Microsoft is a giant dog and pony show. They had the 100 times capped profit thing. Why did they choose such an absurdly high number? They wanted to create the impression that AGI is actually a real possibility and will be worth trillions of dollars. In reality, the profit cap was a farce because they got rid of it anyway. Altman himself is now saying that AGI is not a useful term because it's so vaguely defined. But if that's the case, why did he create an entire corporate structure that's dependent on the definition of AGI? They need to preserve the fiction that AGI is real. And it is so powerful that they need to create a non-profit foundation to protect humanity from its awesome power. A non-profit foundation which is controlled by Sam Altman and his board of yes men. Alright guys, that wraps it up for this video. What do you think about Musk's lawsuit against OpenAI? Let us know in the comments section below. As always, thank you so much for watching and we'll see you in the next one. Wall Street Millennial, signing out.